Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this brief ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Our jet stream level winds tell us a lot about where this pattern is going this week. What we've seen so far this week is a weak trough that's kind of moved through the center part of the country and initiated just some showers and storms, some locally heavy in parts of Iowa, but outside of that, not much. We have the deeper trough that's still exiting east, and there is a lingering frontal boundary still sitting here that's along the Gulf Coast and southeast, which has produced some heavy rains this week. But around this larger ridge that's here over the desert southwest, which has kind of slowed down the monsoon a bit, there's a trough here, a trough over British Columbia, and watch this one here over the Aleutian Islands, because each of these three troughs over the next week or so is going to be sweeping through the northern tier of the United States and certainly having an impact on what's going on with our flow. Now, if you notice the flow right here around this trough is coming out of the south through California, it's what's pushing a lot of that smoke still from those large western wildfires back to the north and there into parts of Oregon, Washington, and Montana and Idaho. And as I kind of just rock back and forth throughout the late afternoon today, you can see here on Thursday some of the bigger storms that are actually popping inside of this in addition to all of the smoke in here. Also some big storms popping in the Central Plains just on the heat of the day and on some relatively weak boundaries. And there's a lot of wildfire smoke in here as well. In addition to that, the cloud cover with that weaker boundary that stretches from Texas back up to Minnesota and Wisconsin and through here. And there's been storms that have been popping on the Appalachian Mountains. And here's that other frontal boundary just hanging off the coast. So those are all of our pieces right now. But as we take a look at where this is all going to go, let's start with some smoke first, because you're going to see a change in the smoke over parts of Oregon and Washington and Northern California as the wave moves on shore. Now that's going to be the feature to watch moving through here on Friday into Saturday. That's going to eventually come into the northern plains and really change the pattern considerably for parts of the northern plains and the upper Midwest and the upper Mississippi River Valley. And I want to get to that and show exactly what I'm talking about here. So upper level flow of the atmosphere. This is our trough and ridge pattern. So remember, 1, 2, 3, 4. There they are. Those are the four pieces we're going to watch. As we go through Friday and into Saturday morning, this southerly wave gets pushed by the flow behind it quickly here into the northern plains over toward Minnesota and Wisconsin. A big change from earlier in the week forecast is the timing and depth of this trough. By the time we do get into the kind of the best potential position for this to make a lot of rainfall, we'll now be seeing more of that rainfall farther to the east over Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin rather than the Red River Valley of the north. But we do have another chance of that coming in. So the second wave went up to Canada, and the third wave is now cutting almost near the Puget Sound here. And as that wave moves into Montana, and then eventually here into southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba, it could next week initiate another round of storms in this area. I'm talking here about North Dakota, South Dakota, the Red River Valley of the North. Now, as we see this pattern evolving, let's watch where it goes after that, because this is now next Thursday, getting into Friday. And what you see is another large ridge rebuilding into this area, and you know what that's going to do to the temperatures along the west. But this is also going to send the jet stream pretty far to the north and leave it with a relatively uneventful look to it at that particular point. And so probably the most important maps to show you are going to be these. What we're going to look at next is from the European model, and it's the probability of getting an inch of rain as we work our way through the weekend and into early next week. Why don't we just stop it out here Tuesday morning? Now what you notice is that on the upper Mississippi River Valley, right here in parts of Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, that's where the heaviest rainfall corridor will likely be. This again is the probability of getting an inch of rainfall. We will have storms in the Dakotas. And remember, there's a second wave coming through. And that second wave that comes through next week increases the chances here as well. But overall, as you move through the next 7 or 8 days, this is going to be the area targeted with the most rainfall. And there are certainly some extremely dry places in here. The transition has been that this has moved farther to the east than what it was forecast earlier this week. Now a reminder, even though you see near 90% chance of getting an inch of rain, the resolution of this model is quite low, okay? And because of that, we do not expect in this area for it just to be covered with a solid inch of rain. It's going to be a lot of thunderstorms, and therefore you're going to have some locally heavier amounts and places nearby that are hit. And we'll of course look at those precipitation totals once we get into next week. Now from there, I'm going to give you a quick update on the tropics. We do have 2 waves that have emerged off the coast of Africa. Here's the wave on the backside, the one that the National Hurricane Center is giving a larger chance of developing. See it right there at the end? because as we look out here, they've got that one at a 70% chance of forming here over the next 5 days. The lead wave has got a 20% chance. Now at this particular point, given the position of the Bermuda High, which is a bit farther to the east and quite strong, these systems will likely get pulled north and stay out in open ocean. And right now, there's no strong indicators that they're going to be coming here toward the southeast or be impacting the Gulf Coast or the East Coast. I do want you to watch mid-August what's going to happen in the Gulf of Mexico. There are some broader picture things, specifically the change in the MJO, that could make that area more favorable for tropical cyclone development getting into the middle of August. But at least through the next 5 days, we're going to see these systems likely curling up here and staying out to open ocean. So we come back to a few maps here to understand the precip pattern across North America. First is what we just got. This is looking at the last 72 hours of total accumulated precip. Now, you see the storms that ran the spine of the Rockies and some of those bigger storms that were out here in the Pacific Northwest. But the weak boundary that moved through the midsection of the country did produce some heavier rains from Omaha and to Des Moines in that area right in the middle part of the country, but that's about it. Storms ran up the Appalachian Mountains, and then our coastal storms on that stalled out boundary, plus the diurnal convection that we get from the sea breeze. That's what you're seeing here. What we're going to look at next is where this is going to go this week. And I'm going to show it to you from 3 different modeling perspectives. This is the next 7 days of total accumulated precipitation from the WPC. So this is a blend between the numerical weather forecast, so the NAM, the GFS, the ECMWF, and so on, plus a National Weather Service forecaster input. And what you've got here, when I color contour this, is that this outer contour is a 1/2 inch, and the inner one here is 1.5 inches. So you do again notice that the National Weather Service is focusing in on that particular spot at having the best chance for some heavier rains. And behind it, it is drier through the next 7 days. What does the European model suggest? Because this is total precip. Let's now look at what we get if we look at this from an anomaly perspective. Now, the European is drier through this whole sector here. And I'll make a point to say that along the Gulf Coast, we will get daily convective storms, and we'll also call that the East Coast as well. But you see that the European is wettest in this corridor getting into Ontario, with the second wave first producing some precip here, and then secondly over North Dakota and the Red River Valley of the North. Now what I want to show you next is the GFS 12Z for the same time period. It's the next week. Ready? So here's the GFS, and here's the European. Now there is a resolution difference. That's why the GFS looks more blotchy. But overall, we have to say that there is some decent agreement on where this precipitation will be falling. I believe that the GFS is too dry over the south, where it's been dry a lot this summer, and it's more expansive on where the wetter weather is going to be centered here on the Midwest. So we can compare both of them, and this is what we got. All right. Everywhere that you see green is where the European model is wetter, and when you see these colors, that is where the GFS is wetter. So notice down here in parts of Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, southern Illinois, the GFS more expansive with that rainfall, wetter farther to the south, whereas the European is wetter farther to the north. And it's just the subtle differences in the way the moisture transport's happening and where the wave is. So maybe take a moment, pause this video, and just look at this map a little closer, because I know I'm focusing in on the precip right here in the midsection of the country, but that is an area, if you've been receiving my morning reports, we've been talking a lot about how dry the soils are in this particular region. Now from here, where does the pattern get to beyond this? Well, certainly I want to make one point before I show you that, and that is to tell you that there will be a severe weather threat in this area by the time we get into Saturday. Okay, so this would be looking out there at the 7th. And my concern is that we could have storm type threat here. So not only tornadic storms, but also those that can produce hail and straight line winds. We're gonna have to keep a very close eye on the evolution of that. Now, how about getting beyond there? Day 10. At this point, I do see the models attempting to produce ridges that flank the United States. So the jet stream flow is gonna go over the top of them like this. Now this kind of flow in through here and very weak flow farther to the south means that there are just no major identifying features that I could point to say, expect this out of that pattern. It's very boring, a northward shifted jet stream, and therefore, at best, this produces a lot of scattered storms. So what does the GFS say the precip pattern is going to look like for week 2? Well, it's wettest in through here, but a lot of that is the exiting system we just talked about. It's too dry along the Gulf Coast where there will be daily storms, but it has dried out the midsection of the country, even though there will be scattered storms in this area. The European model has very similar. See the ridge here and the ridge there. So the flow doing the same thing. But with this flow coming in like this, the European model is a bit more aggressive on the week 2 precipitation to the south. So you can now see that it's more wet in this whole area with drier conditions here. But overall, these are not strong anomalies either way, both in the European or in the GFS. And like I said, it's too dry down here in the model. So week 2 not giving us any strong signals at this point. Now, what are the bigger features moving forward? Well, let's talk temperature first, and then I'll get to them and we'll wrap this up. Our temperatures today on Thursday, well, we've already seen these highs. We're getting to the evening when I'm producing this video. So let's take a look at where things get on Friday. Heat returns in the Central Plains. It exits across the south and southeast. And with that trough coming through, look at the cool down we get here in the Pacific Northwest. We might see triple digits on Saturday in Kansas and Oklahoma and parts of Texas. And as we work our way into the weekend, Sunday's a really hot day right in the middle of the country. But broad warmth spreading across the country as that next wave moves into the Pacific Northwest. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week, we've seen the return of warmth across an area that had been relatively dry, or cool, And then we look out there day 5 through 10, and overall, we maintain about a 3 to 8 degree warm bias here, but with that ridge redeveloping in the west, very hot once again in the models, 10 to 20 degrees above average is what we're looking at there along the western side of North America. Okay, now that we've got this better idea about the next 10 days or so, let's go take a look at that longer term forecast. This was just released this afternoon, just before I recorded. It's now the August 10th through the September 9th precipitation outlook. And once again, the European model has kept it very wet across a broad sector of the United States. But the only thing I can attribute this to consistently is just keeping the Gulf open. And the lower resolution of this model, when all that moisture comes in, just means it puts out a lot of rain. But the reality of it is a lot of this is going to be scattered thunderstorm and development, and there are going to be places that are dry. I also can make a case that I think this is too dry. We've seen with the latest ocean temperatures that the La Nina is developing stronger. So we have a very positive Southern Oscillation Index that tends to produce drier conditions in this area. We have very warm ocean temperatures here in the Atlantic, and the systems coming out of this are moving into, Pacific, in the Pacific, and those systems are moving here into the Aleutian Islands. And I think that's going to really perturb the polar jet stream, possibly slowing it down, allowing it to get blocked up more. So again, I look at that and say, well, what about that would make it overly wet in this area? I don't think it's really in the cards at this point. What could screw that all up? A tropical system coming out of the Gulf or out of the Caribbean or out of the Atlantic that sneaks in there and brings its moisture. But at this point, remember, we're not forecasting that. And just to make another point about this, that La Nina that's developing in here, just remember, correlating that to our August and September precipitation patterns, well, there's a negative correlation with that Southern Oscillation Index, meaning in through this area, we tend to be a bit drier. So I think the models are overly aggressive on the wet right now and maybe not picking up on how wet it could be along the Gulf and East Coast. That would be my major conclusion about what you saw right here in the forecast. Remember, big wild card, tropical cyclones, they are not forecast. They are not forecast by seasonal models. Speaking of seasonal models, this came out just about an hour ago. It's the new long range. Let's look at the next 6 months in terms of precipitation here, okay? September, October, November. The models are being consistent with the developing La Nina, and they are calling for a lot of the United States, better chances of a drier harvest. Now, in the Pacific Northwest, from Northern California to Pacific Northwest, this is very consistent behavior with the developing La Nina, an early onset to the precipitation. As we go from September, October, November to October, November, December, now you see the risk of being drier in these areas, but the wetter conditions here, that is La Nina to the T. That's exactly what we would expect. And if we just go on into the beginning of winter, this is November, December, January, and then December, January, February. Again, wetter northern half of the U.S., drier south. That is what La Ninas tend to produce, and I believe the models kind of bid into that as the main forecasting parameter. Now, what about temperatures for this upcoming winter? Well, you could expect cooler conditions in through here because that is also very La Nina-like with warmth across the south. Now, if we step this back, what about those fall temperatures? Let's get back here. It appears at this point that we're going to be warmer than average September, October, November across the northern part of the U.S., near normal over parts of the south and southeast. So that's brand new long-range data from the European Ensemble. I'm going to wrap it up there. We'll think about it more this weekend and report back to you again on Monday. Thanks.